are very much biased towards the sage on the stage lecture model. So we're trying to change that, and we're also looking at changing the RPT process just to put more emphasis on contributions in terms of teaching and pedagogical research. So we haven't succeeded in all of this. This is ongoing. It's a 5-year project, but we are in process. So that was my context. Now I sort of want to switch to why did I do this? Because I was a computer science professor doing human-computer interaction. I loved it. But this is what happened was I was teaching for 3 years, and then I got bored, so I started sort of doing more active learning, and that made teaching a lot more satisfying for me. But I was still teaching 3rd and 4th year, upper year computer science type classes in my subtopic domain of human-computer interaction. But I kept encountering this. And this just blew my mind. I was like, what do you mean you're a computer science major and you hate programming? Right? I couldn't understand it. Like, why are you here then? And how can you possibly hate programming? To me, programming is the most creative, fun thing you can do. You build stuff that never existed before. I mean, how cool is that? And these students were not coming through with that. So I really felt like something's wrong here, like there's something broken, and I need to do something about it. And so that was how I started turning my attention towards the first year, these big intro critical classes, the first and second classes. So what's the situation with CS classes? CS1, which is that intro programming class, worldwide has failure rates between 30 and 50%. It's huge. Lots of students don't get through this course. And the rates tend to be higher. We have more women and more minorities not getting through these courses. So that's a problem. We have a huge diversity and inclusion problem in computing, which has been big in the media lately, so I'm sure you all sort of know about this. There's also an economic issue. To me, I have an undergraduate degree in economics, so I pay attention to this stuff. I think this is really critical that in North Carolina, there's 16,000 open, unfilled computing jobs, right? And in 2015, we graduated fewer than 1,300 students in the States with CS majors. So there's no hope of us filling these jobs. We are not producing enough people. There's a problem with K-12. Only 18% of high schools in North Carolina offer an AP computer science class. So that's really a problem. So we're getting lots of students in who've never taken computer science before. The range, the diversity of our incoming students is insane. It's all over the place. And I get faculty saying, well, why are we getting these students? We should only have students who are prepared. And my answer is, you know what? We have to teach the students who are in front of us. Not the students we wish we had, not the students we used to have, but the students who are in front of us right now. And they've got a huge diverse skill set. So we've got to adapt. I also like to think a lot about the micro perspective of the individual student, and I think the social concerns have been completely ignored for far too long. So if you think about a university student away from their family for the first time, on this strange campus, they barely know anybody, they walk into this huge intro class, this is the kind of stuff that they're thinking about, right? Social anxiety. Where am I going to sit? Does anybody sit next to me? Is anybody going to talk to me? I don't know about those people over there. Those people look scary. They look like they're really smart. I probably can't keep up, right? There's just so much going on, and that means these students are receptive to learning. They're freaking out, right? So we need to think about this and do what we can to structure the classroom environment to help them. And there's lots of reasons I think that students fail. And probably one of them that's really critical is that our expectations of what students can do is unrealistic. So we think that students should be able to program after one semester or a year of programming. And if they've never done it before, that's completely crazy. So I think I would actually claim that what we've been doing in the past is not teaching computer science. We've been accepting students who teach themselves computer science in their spare time as their hobby. And then we've been giving them a degree and taking credit for having taught them computer science. And we really haven't. I think another reason that students fail is the traditional lecture structure is just boring, it's passive, it's lonely for students. Students are sitting there by themselves listening to you talk, and they're not getting a chance to really interact with others and make friends and get to know people. So they feel disconnected. They don't have a lot of social support. And there's research that shows that women in STEM fields feel isolated. And I was talking to some woman at lunch today who said that exact thing, right? It's isolating when there's not a lot of people who look like you and you don't get a chance to talk to anybody or make friends. It's really isolating and lonely, and that's not positive. So we need to think about how can we serve a much broader audience, because we're not going to be able to fill the jobs by just recruiting and attracting that small percentage of those very stereotypical nerdy guys who spend all their weekends coding on their own at home, right? Those people are great. We love them, we need them, we want them, but we want others too. And it's not just a white Asian male thing, right? There's lots of males who have lots of other interests and who are very diverse, and they also are being failed by this system. So we need to teach in a way that's much more inclusive and collaborative. I also would claim that we are failing the students who pass CS1, right? These are the students who are getting to my third year class and saying, I hate programming. These students are damaged goods. They've already decided that programming is horrible, right? And this is really a big problem. So they get through, but they dislike or they can't actually really do any programming, so that's not good. They have this fear and loathing about programming in CS. They lack social skills, they haven't developed any teamwork skills, they haven't developed communication skills, and they lack the support network. What are we doing to these students? And I really would claim that the traditional stage on the stage lecture model for intro big classes in STEM is doing damage. So here's what the research questions are that I started to look at and want to actually study and try to do something about and collect data on. So can the flipped active learning model, especially if we bring teams and collaboration into this, can that increase engagement? Can it increase performance in terms of how well students do and how much they learn? And can it increase their connectedness and social integration? And then, how does this impact retention? So that's what I've been looking at for the past number of years. So, and this is why. The flipped class model. How many people are pretty familiar with flipped classes? Okay, so some, but not all. Okay, so the general idea with flipped classes is we are going to invert the structure of the classroom. We are going to have students consume content outside of the classroom, usually by watching videos, doing some reading, that kind of thing. They're doing that at home, and when they come into the classroom, they're engaging with the material. They're applying it, analyzing it, doing all of those sort of higher level Bloom's taxonomy cognitive activities. And then that means that they're doing all that in a space where they have friends around, people, peers who can help, and they have faculty and the teaching staff, TAs, who can help when they're stuck. Because in the traditional model, you sit in a lecture hall, you listen to someone talk at you, like I'm doing right now, sorry. It's kind of deadly and boring. And then you go home and you try to apply, but you fell half asleep during half the lecture, you missed something, you didn't understand, you thought you understood, but you didn't, and then you're trying to do something with that, and you can't, and you're by yourself and you're alone. I mean, the internet can help a little bit, but the internet does not know your context or your problem or your class, right? So by flipping this, people get support. The other really big point here, I think, is that the video watching model really gives people flexibility. So I've had students say to me, I love this. I put you on double speed and it's the best. I'm like, okay, whatever works for you, right? And then I've had students who are ESL students who really benefit from watching at a slower speed, or they use the closed captioning, right, on the videos. I have students who watch videos over and over again because they're new and they're struggling and they have the ability to do that. You can't rewind me in the classroom, right? But you can when you're watching videos at home, and that's really critical. Students tell me, I love it because I watch videos at 3 a.m. when I'm in my pajamas. I'm like, okay, too much visual. But like, this is really flexible for students. They can adapt it to what works for them. So here's what our flipped classes look like. Wow, these colors are really forward, sorry. In our typical first year classes, students do a whole bunch of prep work, and I mean seriously, a whole bunch of prep work, and then they come to a pair programming lab. So pair programming is a fairly common paradigm in computer science. So they come in and they do that, and then at the end of the week, they come in and they do a 3-hour workshop. So 3 hours, our classes are 3 hours long. But it's all active learning. There's no lecturing of any real consequence in that 3 hours. The other sort of tweak that's very CS specific here is that the pair programming lab, we do gender paired programming. So females are only paired with females for pair programming, and males only with males. The reason for this is that there's this thing that happens when you have a guy and a girl programming together. Typically, not always, but typically the girl has come in and has less experience. Typically the guy has more experience, and the guy takes over. And the guy grabs the keyboard and does the lab. And what this does is now the guy gets even more experience, the girl has even less experience in comparison, and that becomes this negative cycle that just keeps on going. And I have to say here, this is not intentional, okay? Sometimes guys get really defensive when I talk about this, but this is not intentional. It's not like the guy's like, I want to derail her career today. No. What this typically is the guy saying, oh, I know how to do this, and I can get it done really fast when we get out of here, and I'll show you, right? So they have good intentions. It just doesn't work out well in the long run. So that's why we do the gender paired programming. So there's a lot of challenges with this model, though. Like, you know, it's not perfect and it's not necessarily easy. It's a lot of work up front, specifically with finding and making videos. That's a huge amount of effort. Structuring the work, figuring out how to get it so that students actually do it. Creating those active learning activities, because now you've got to fill all that time you used to lecture and have the students actually do something meaningful. There's a meta-education aspect of that, and what I'll say about that is that this model breaks students' expectations. Hollywood does not show this model when you see movies of higher education, right? It's the sage on the stage, the white male in front of the big gigantic room saying really profound things, right? So you have to tell students why you're doing this. You have to tell them over and over again. You've got to show them data, and you've got to explain why this is better for them. And if you do this often enough, they start to buy in, right? But structuring the in-class interactions, what I'm going to spend most of today talking about, I do want to look at video for just a second, because this is something that people really struggle with. How do you make all these videos? And the answer is that I don't make all these videos. I do make some when I feel like there's something that I really want to explain in my own way that really relates to specifically what we're talking about in my section of the class or something. But there's so much intro STEM material on YouTube, on Vimeo, TED Talks, all these sources. There's tons of that stuff. Show Me is one of my favorite tools. It's a little iPad app where I write on it. It's like it's a whiteboard and it captures my voice. That keeps the pacing at a really comfortable level for students so they can follow without it going super fast. QuickTime Screen Capture, when I want to show how to code something, QuickTime Screen Capture is my best friend. It's so easy, okay? The best hint, though, that I can give you for this is student curation. So when we're going to flip a classroom, we run a summer section for 4 or 5 students, whoever needs a senior project credit or an independent study credit or whatever, and they spend the summer combing the internet to find the best videos for the course. They curate them, they write summaries of them, they make quizzes about those videos for us, and suddenly half of that work that's involved in doing this is done for you, and those students benefit because they just had all sorts of reinforced learning on a course that they took. And it's great. They're happy, we're happy, it works really well. And they know what kinds of things, which videos are going to appeal to their fellow peers. So this is really fantastic. The other thing, of course, is make sure that you're doing this small, short videos. So capturing an hour lecture and then putting it online next year instead of doing it doesn't work. It's horrible. Right? If students have trouble staying awake during a 1-hour live lecture, think about them trying to stay awake during a 1-hour recorded lecture. It's awful. Forcing functions are really critical. So this is a screenshot from Moodle, which is the LMS that we used to use, but I put a ton of structure into my flipped classes. So every week looks like this. There's a rhythm to it that students get very used to. There's this prep work heading. The students have to watch the videos. They have to read the chapter, they have to do some programming, and then they take the quiz. And this quiz is closed off until they've done all those other things, okay? And the quiz is due before class starts, and it's worth points. And this is the kind of forcing function that you need to put in to make sure that students do all of that work that's needed so that they're really ready to engage with the material when they come into your class. And so, yes, students have to check off the box beside the read chapter 6 of the textbook, and maybe some students might check it off dishonestly without having read the textbook. But a lot of students will do what they're supposed to do. And it's funny how those check boxes are really upsetting to students if they aren't able to check them off, right? Like some students are so like, oh my gosh, there's a checkbox that's not checked, right? So this is really, it really works well. So this is kind of the basic forcing function you're really going to need to set up, and it's a lot. But students get used to the rhythm of this weekly prep work, and they know every week I've got to do about 2 hours of work before I can take that quiz and get to class on time. And there's one other thing that's a forcing function, and that's peer pressure. So lightweight teams is the thing that gives peer pressure, which is an additional forcing function. So what are lightweight teams? This is teams of students who work together all semester long. They're put in a group, but they work on low stakes activities. So I define a low stake activity as an activity in which it's not worth a lot of points towards their final grade, and any points that it is worth on their final grade is not dependent on a teammate. So if they're stuck in a team with 4 students who don't know what they're doing, it doesn't matter, right? They get to put their own answer into the quiz, right? They get to submit their own response to any kind of question or sheet or whatever that I might give them to do. So they get to work together and they can help each other, but their grade is not dependent on the teammates. So this is not like, it's the opposite of those high stakes semester-long team projects. Those things are great for 4th year courses, but for intro courses, the students just need to get this new knowledge and these new skills, right? And so setting this up, basically the idea is you have teamwork, but you take away all that grade stress. And then you have all the benefits of social learning. So here's what somebody has to say about this. Wait, it didn't play. Uh-oh. That's not good. Let me see what I can do about that.
Class was gamified, so we still had an incentive to work together, but because our grades weren't dependent on each other, we didn't feel the pressure to just, get the answer done and move on. My teammates were more inclined to help me with any problems I had, and I was more inclined to help them with any problems because my grade was secure and their grade was secure.
Okay, so we're taking away that sort of competitive aspect of things, but we're also taking away that, oh my gosh, this student in my team is not pulling their weight, because there's no weight to pull because their score is not my score on anything. So we've done flipped classrooms and lightweight teams in many classes now in our college. And this is how we typically do it. We usually have teams of 5 students, and they're randomly assigned, right? In 4th year project courses, you probably want to assign based on balancing skills and things, but here it can be pretty much random. The reason I say mostly is that in computer science, with the gender issue that we have with so few women, I will make sure that there isn't one woman on a team with 4 guys. I will grab another woman and put her on that team. So that means that I have lots of teams that have no women, but I have some teams that have a pair of women, so the women don't feel isolated. I'm also trying to do the same thing with minorities, although that's trickier. These teams stay together all semester, and they have a fixed seating plan. So what happens is students walk into our classrooms, and we say, no, you don't get to sit down, come here. And we've got lists of all the teams, or they look them up because it's on their LMS, on their mobile phones, and then we show them a seating plan. And we say, here's where your team is sitting, go meet your new friends, this is where you're sitting all semester long, okay? Some people have said, Celine, you're so Canadian and nanny state. And I'm like, yep, I like telling people what to do. And then they do these active learning activities together the whole time. So that's how the teams work. This is a picture of the classrooms. So I have done this in many different classroom configurations. And so that one that's right here, this is actually, this is actually fairly similar to this class in some sense, but you can see that I've engineered the team so they can actually collaborate. So I would say you two and you three are a team, you two and you three are a team, so that people can turn around and talk to each other. You can't have a team of 5 that are sitting in a row. You just have to give this a little bit of thought and set it up, but you can do it in a room like this, right? Where you can't do it is if you have a big auditorium room that is packed full of seats like this. Then it just would be really, really hard to do. I've had some faculty try to do some, and they can do it a little bit, but it really doesn't work as well. You need to be able to have students be able to get into teams, and you as a professor need to be able to get around to them, and get around to each team and be able to talk with them and interact with them. And in a gigantic packed auditorium, that's definitely a lot harder to do. So the top right is the type of classroom that I'm in right now, which just has these little individual seats that move around on wheels, and they have a little thing under the basket, like a basket under the seat for people's stuff, and a little table. Works well there. I don't even show the tables. I'm just like, this area, team 1, make a table, right? This bottom right is an active learning classroom that seats 126 or 130 people, 9 people at each of these tables. It's a huge, crazy active learning room with lots of technology. So it works great in there, but it works in a room like this too. So it's not completely impossible if you don't have an active learning room. So what the sort of the standard thing that we do the most as kind of like the foundational activity is the peer instruction quiz. How many people are familiar with the peer instruction quiz? Okay, so this is like basically a clicker quiz, but it's not a clicker quiz where a student sits there and answers, and it's silent and quiet. This is an interactive peer instruction clicker quiz. So what happens is I project a question on the screen, students and their team, they talk about it with each other, and then they get to answer. But everybody gets to put in their own answer, right? So this is lightweight. It's not like they have to come to a consensus. They often do, but they don't have to. And then I show the responses. Not the correct answer, but just the histogram of responses. And if everybody's got the correct answer, great. We move on to the next one. But often, they don't. There's sort of a whole bunch of different answers. People are all over the place. And that's when I'll say, okay, get up, go find somebody who has a different answer than you, convince them that your answer is right. Start a debate. And so they have to go and they get up and they walk around the room, and then they're really engaging about the material, really talking about it. And then I'll re-poll the question. They get a second chance to put in what they think is the right answer. Most of the time this leads to convergence towards the right answer. Not always, right? Sometimes it leads to convergence towards a wrong answer. And that then tells me, wow, like there's a misconception here. And this is beautiful when it happens, because that to me is the point at which I get to give a little mini 3-minute lecture, and I explain to them what the right answer is, why the answer they thought that was right, isn't right. And the beauty of this is that these students right then are primed for this knowledge, right? They've just gotten an answer wrong, they've just lost points on a quiz. They're like, wait, what, huh? And they're ready to listen. So if that 3-minute lecture explanation had been buried inside of a 90-minute lecture, they would have been totally lost, right? But with this method, they are primed and receptive. So this works really well. And it's just important to note that students don't have to agree with their teammates, right? Lightweight. And this is not, I don't think of this as an assessment exercise. It's a learning exercise. It's an engagement exercise. It's getting students to really deeply engage. It's multiple choice questions, but I don't do typically, I might start with 1 or 2 vocabulary regurgitation questions, but I'm typically putting code up. They have to trace through it. They have to understand it. They have to find the bugs. It's analysis. It's higher level synthesis, that kind of thing. So here's how this looks in practice. This is my colleague Bruce teaching one of these classes.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
There we go.
It's close enough. It's close enough.
You really want to know?
this is not your standard quiet classroom. This is really active, it's very casual, it's fun, and students love this. And you'll notice a difference when you walk into an active learning classroom like this halfway through a term. You walk in 10 minutes before things are supposed to start, everybody's talking, it's loud. And think about what happens if you walk in 10 minutes before a traditional lecture class. What do you see? What are students doing? Right? Everybody's quietly on their own phone, right? So this creates a community. It really creates, it's almost like a party, right? Okay, so that's the general idea. That's what we've been doing, lots of classes. Now I want to share with you how we've researched and sort of done some studying to find out, how does this actually work. So the first study is really experiential. We wanted to know what's students' learning experience like when they're in this type of class. So the data I'm going to show you is based on the first 2 semesters that we did this. And various enrollment, we had 2 classes, so of course the spring enrollment is always lower in terms of the number of students. The data collection is based on anonymous surveys done through the LMS, 40 to 45 questions, which sounds like a lot, but they're agreement rating type questions. They're very quick and easy to answer. So we looked at that, and then we also examined grade performance on the follow-up course. So how did our students do when they got to CS2 versus the students who took the traditional CS1 lecture format? So the first thing I'll show you is kind of what to me was a shocking result when I saw it. Because if you've ever taught a team project course, you know that students loathe teamwork. They complain about it, they hate it. But look at this. We asked students if they liked being part of a team and sitting with their team each week. There wasn't a single negative response. Everybody liked this. I was like, I'm telling people where to sit and they like it. Right? This is kind of crazy. Here's another student. Why is that not?
Being assigned into a lightweight team was actually very reassuring. Because I didn't have a background in computer science or anything related to computer science, I was able to work with my group mates and actually depend on them. And that actually gave me the confidence in working with groups in future courses.
So this helps scaffold teamwork skills, right? Here's some results about how this helps with learning. So working with my team members to answer clicker questions helps me to learn. Almost all students agreed with this. Using clickers for the Friday workshops, this helps to keep me engaged. So again, this is positive engagement, which wasn't really surprising. We knew that the students were engaged. We could see it, but they are reporting that.
They were my resource. They helped build my confidence, and they definitely were part of what changed my life and helped me to know that computer science was for me.
So this is the impact that having teams, making friends and talking to people can have on students who are, she was one of very few females in one of our first classes. This is my favorite result. We asked students how many friends they made. Nobody has ever asked this question before. And we said, this is important, and we asked students. This is a little bit hard to parse, but what this shows is that there's one person who said they made no friends, 2 people said they made 1 friend, 2 people said they made 2 friends, etc. More than 60% of the people in this class said that they made 5 or more new friends as a result of taking this class. And you may think, well, my job is to educate. My job isn't to help students make friends, right? But these students, because they've made friends, now have a support network. That means when they get to those harder classes, they have somebody to call upon. They have other people they know who are going through the same struggles. So this is really, I think, critical for longer term retention in the future. Uh-oh. It's the spinning beach ball of death. That's not good. I didn't plug in my computer. Is it? Let's try it.
You got quickly associated and comfortable with a small group of people. It was like 5 or 6 people in a group out of a whole classroom. I guess another bonus is that outside of this class, these are still your friends. So it became like a close, kind of family.
So that's a computer science student saying that the 4 people he was put in the group with became a family to him. So this is really pretty compelling, it's pretty cool. So here's the results on performance. So this compares students from the traditional versus students from the flipped who went on to take CS2. CS2 is taught as a traditional course at this point. And more of our students got A's and B's, fewer of our students got C's and D's, and none of our students got F's. Okay? So we're not just creating an engaging experience and passing more students. These students are then actually succeeding more at the next level. All right, so really the way that I'd like to think about this is that we're handing freshmen or first-year students friends on a platter, and that creates a dynamic and a social integration and community that really helps enhance learning in so many different ways. Soft skills, we were talking about this today, right? I'm supposed to call them professional skills? Right, soft skills, bad terminology. In this model, students are spending 3 to 6 hours a week talking with other people about their domain, right? So it's not just that they're taking a communications class, right, to get these skills, they're practicing it within their domain. So when they go out into industry, they know how to talk about this stuff. They learn from teaching each other, right? They're teaching each other, that reinforces their learning. It scaffolds skills for teamwork, and possibly it leads to better performance in industry, although we've done nothing to try to track that.
Computer science came easy to me, and so I was able to teach my group mates what we were learning, and it helped reinforce the concepts for myself. And we also became friends and hung out outside of class, and we still hang out today.
Okay, so that was the experiential study. The second study we did was, let's dig into the data and see how this impacts student retention. So there's a lot here, and this is fairly new work. We're about to present this at SIGSE, which is the Computer Science Education Conference in February. And this is work that I did with Audrey Rohrer, who's got a PhD in assessment. So our college has hired somebody who has a PhD in assessment to help us measure and understand what's going on. And that's been a really great critical resource for us. So what we're looking at is 2 things. First, pass-fail rates, to see how that varies by instructional method. And then we're looking at both next term retention, so this is immediately after, and 1-year retention, so 1 year after taking CS1. And the retention stuff is slightly different in that, and limited. There's a lot of limitations to the study. Limited in the sense that we're only looking at retention of the students who passed CS1. So we're not looking at what happened to the students who failed, but the performance data is sort of looking at that to some extent. So here's the performance data. So we're looking at pass-fail. Pass is anybody who got an A, B, or C, and at UNC Charlotte, that means 70% or higher. Fail is people who got a D or an F or withdrew from the class. So we're looking at data over 4 years, students who took CS1 in either the spring or fall semester in those 4 years. And then we're sort of studying what the results are. And so a chi-square analysis revealed statistically significant differences. More students passed in the flipped classroom than in the traditional version. So we know more students are passing, and we know they're doing better when they get on to the next class. So this is really positive. The retention stuff is kind of messy, so I've got to go through a bunch of stuff here and define some things for you. Our dependent variable is either next term retention or 1 year retention. Our independent variable is the retention method. And then we're breaking this down across 3 different dimensions that are, of course, things that are relevant to us: enrollment, sex, and race and ethnicity. So we have a lot of transfer students. These are students who have 2 years of a community college. In the States, they call this an associate's degree. I've never even heard of this. But so a lot of students who are transferring in after 2 years of a community college. And so those are transfer students, and they're really kind of a different population than our freshmen straight out of high school students. They're really quite different. So then sex, male versus female. UNC Charlotte does not collect anything other than the binary on this. And then race, ethnicity, and this is the US, so that's complicated. So we have to do a non-parametric analysis here because the numbers in each of these cells really vary. The flipped version, there's 1 section of the flipped version every semester, and there's 4, 5, 6 sections of the traditional, so there's already a big imbalance in the data there. And then there's big imbalances in the gender data. There's far fewer women, far fewer of the different minorities. So we're going to talk about underrepresented minorities, which officially include African American, Hispanic, Native American, Pacific Islander, and multiracial. In the context of UNC Charlotte, we don't really have Pacific Islanders, and we don't typically really have Native Americans. So that's really African Americans and Hispanics mostly. And then the majority, in contrast to that, is white and Asian. Now, even with that breakdown, we often have cells where the numbers are so small because we really have so few minorities in computer science. And so further analysis actually groups together the racial ethnic minority students with women who are actually an underrepresented group in computer science. And so we're looking at underrepresented racial minorities and women versus a majority, which is white and Asian males. So, got it? It's like complicated. This is just, it's a lot of data. So here are some study limitations before I show you the data. So again, the retention data ignores people who failed CS1, so we're only looking at the people who got through. And there's contextual confounds. Our CS courses have been changing in various different ways. There's a lot of differences between these two course versions. It's not like it's the same test, it's the same assignments, it's just a different teaching method. These are completely different courses, right? In the flipped class, we use median computation. We have 4 low-stakes tests instead of a midterm and final. Like, it's a completely different course. And so we can see how students fare after these different courses, but we can't necessarily say exactly what thing led to the results that we see, right? There's just so many factors at play. And we haven't controlled for instructor. Who can control for instructor in this long of a study, right? You just can't. Okay, so next term retention. So this is students passed. What are they doing the following term? Are they still enrolled as a computer science major, or have they changed major or dropped out of the university? And so the 3 things that are highlighted in color are the ones where we found a statistically significant effect. The rest of them, there was just no statistically significant difference. So I'm going to talk about the one that's circled in red here. This is the transfer students. So these are the students who've done 2 years of community college and then come in. When they were compared by sex and course, the female transfer students were much more likely to be retained in the major after taking the flipped classroom. And the opposite was found for the males. The male transfer students were more likely to be retained if they took the traditional. So, kind of interesting. What's going on there? And then actually, it's the same, exact same thing for the female freshmen who aren't transfer students, just the ones who are straight out of high school. We saw the exact same thing. And I'll show you that data. So this is just the raw data. This is for freshmen, not transfer students. So these numbers are kind of small. But what you're seeing is we have no females who changed over the major after taking the flipped class, and we have females who did change over the major after the traditional. The percentage in terms of males, more males changed over the major after the flipped class than the traditional. So this is interesting. What is it about the flipped classroom that is actually driving males away and keeping women? So that's that. This is a statistically significant difference. And then we can start to look at race. And this is really kind of an astounding result. Not a single ethnic minority changed majors after taking the flipped classroom model. So this to me is fantastic because these students have been really underserved by the traditional education model. Okay, and then we can look at basically sort of similar results for 1-year retention. And the one that I'm going to focus on is the pink one. This is the one kind of to me is sort of bigger negative result, which is that the minority ethnic transfer students, so these are African American and Hispanic students who did 2 years of community college, and then they come to UNC Charlotte to take CS, and they are more likely to change majors or drop out of the university after the flipped version than after the traditional. So, not a fantastic result. This is sort of, we really do have some mixed results. Some results that I'm really excited about, some results that are like, okay, what is going on here? So, is it that these students after 1 semester were feeling great. They had this split classroom activity, it was good. And then the next semester they took CS2 and they took it in a traditional way. And suddenly stopped feeling so welcome, stopped being successful. That's one possible explanation. These students tend to be older. They tend to have families, kids, greater ties off campus to their own communities than on campus. And so there's a lot going on here. And they're very, very diverse, right? So it's hard to study what's going on with these students. Okay, in general, we feel like there's positive results here. And we think that most of the positive results that we're seeing are because this constant in-class discussion, the social interaction, is really sort of a game changer. And the way that I like to think about this game changer is that it's a moderating influence on confidence. So if you're talking together all the time, typically the women who come in with very low confidence and think they don't know anything, through talking constantly with other people in the class, and I actually know something, right? This is a good thing. And I think that there might be an opposite effect where there's some men who come in super overconfident and think they know everything, and through spending a lot of time talking, people realize, I don't know anything, right? And maybe that's why some of those guys are leaving when in the flipped model, but they don't leave when in the traditional model, because their confidence bubble never gets burst in the traditional model, right? Because they never talk to anybody. I don't know. That's just a hypothesis of what's going on in terms of the gender differences. I think that the retention is really good because the faculty are more engaged and they become aware of misconceptions much more quickly and can address them right away. And the students learn more deeply because they're teaching each other and talking with each other, and because they hear multiple perspectives on any particular concept. So it's not just how the teacher explains it, but it's how the other people at their table explain it. So they're creating more different neural connections to the concept than just the one. And that's, I think, powerful. So this is kind of a long quote, but I love it. It's a recent quote that was just forwarded to me from Bruce Long, who teaches this. And this is a quote from a female student who took the flipped CS last year. She says, for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm actually learning something in a programming class. Part of this is structuring, but another part of it is that I was working with other women. And there was no, let me help you by doing it for you with my very strong and masculine programming skills. I've taken classes in object-based programming before, and more often than not, that was my experience. The pacing in the class was also incredibly well structured. I also felt like the relaxed environment and student-professor interactions were really helpful for me. I'm a nervous person and often heavily doubt my own programming skills, but in lab and class, it just felt like I was in a room full of friends who were working together. So this almost like makes me want to cry, right? Like this is what I was going for when I said I'm going to re-engineer our first year computer science classes. And so I think that we are on the right track. We haven't got all the answers, we're not doing it perfectly yet, but we're certainly doing some stuff right. There's a lot of research questions that are still, need to be looked at. So the takeaways from what we've learned so far, I think, is that the lightweight teams as a structure for the flipped classroom are really positive in enabling underrepresented students to succeed. They help students perform better in later courses and learn more deeply, and they really help the students create a community. And we've seen the sense of community in our college change over time. Like it just feels like there's much more of a community. We see students who we randomly threw onto teams wandering around campus and together. And these are people who are kind of diverse and not necessarily looking like one another, and we threw them together and they're now friends, so that's really great. But there's lots of questions. So we've been flipping a lot of our core classes, and what does this do? I mean, you can ask, what does one class do? But what happens when a student has taken 4 or 5 flipped classes in a row? How does that change their perception of what education is supposed to be and how they feel about their ownership of their education? So we want to sort of look into some of this stuff more. We think that it helps them become more self-sufficient learners and helps them feel more empowered about their education, and actually changes what they think the university value add is, right? So in the age of MOOCs, when expert lecturers from Harvard and Berkeley can do better lectures than most of us can on STEM topics, we have to question, well, what is it that students are coming to us for then? And I think this is a model that really provides value added for students. So there are questions about, are there students who are not served well by this model, right? I mean, there were more men who were leaving the flipped class model. So what's going on there? I have one hypothesis, but who knows if that has any truth to it. Disabilities, right? What about people who are on the autism spectrum, right? How is a classroom that forces 3 hours of really intense social interaction going to work for a student who's got Asperger's or something along those lines? What about auditory processing deficiencies? So our classrooms tend to be really loud because there's all these students and they're all talking. It gets really loud in there. So there's possibly some students who this doesn't work well for. Maybe there's other things that we're not even thinking about that mean this doesn't work well for some students. And then of course, if we could figure out who those were, how do we identify those students? And what's the best way to direct students to the traditional model versus the flipped model? Don't know. Lots of open research to do here. So that was it, and I just wanted to mention that there's lots of other computer science education research that I do. I created a FemTech course for non-majors about gender and technology. I run with a theater colleague sexism response workshops that use classroom role play to help students think more, all students think more about these issues. I do a lot to teach programming through art and design. I do a lot of research that's interactive with art and dance and theater. I also have a project that's about video technology to support team-based learning, and I'm interested in how using 3D spatial reasoning and sketching and tracing can really help students learn how to program. So lots of other stuff in CSN, but with that, I will stop and let people ask questions. So thank you.